Kim jest Michael Kandel? To tłumacz Stanisława Lema, tutaj Cyberiada i Kongres Futurologiczny. To także autor, może nie super popularny w Stanach, ale autor kilku książek. Tu egzemplarz jego powieści Panda Ray. Wreszcie to edytor, twórca antologii Polska Księga Potworów, która zbierała opowiadania wielu polskich pisarzy i ukazała się w Stanach kilka lat temu. Były tam teksty na przykład Marka Huberatha, mój, Andrzeja Sapkowskiego, no kilku innych autorów. A przede wszystkim, i dlatego zapraszam Was na to nagranie, jest to redaktor, który przez wiele lat współpracował z Ursulą Le Guin. W tych ostatnich latach, kiedy ukazywały się jej ostatnie książki. No i poprosiłem go, żeby króciutko skomentował to, jak się z nią pracowało, żeby opowiedział, jak trafił do tej roboty, jak się zostaje redaktorem Ursuli Le Guin, no i coś tam jeszcze dodał od siebie. Więc króciutki filmik, taki appendix do mojego nagrania o 5 światach Ursuli Le Guin, które możecie oglądać na nitce tematycznej Sobota z Fantastyką. Zapraszam na spotkanie z Michaelem Kandelem, a kiedyś zrobimy z nim naprawdę długą rozmowę o polskiej fantastyce, o Lemie, o rynku amerykańskiej fantastyki. Słuchajcie Michaela.
So, Tomek Kołodziejczak asked me to speak briefly about how I became an editor for Ursula Le Guin. I was mainly a manuscript editor, assistant editor. I was not an acquiring editor, where you bring a new author into a publishing house. But I got very excited at one point about a manuscript written by Patricia Anthony, and I expressed my enthusiasm to the editor-in-chief, and he said, why don't you acquire science fiction and fantasy? So I did so for a few years on a limited basis. Most of my authors had not been published before. So one day I got a phone call from Virginia Kid Agency, which is a very big agency in the United States for science fiction and fantasy. And I had spoken with Virginia Kid in the past, but this was a new guy. He was going to replace her, I think. She was retiring. Jim Allen was his name. And he said, what do you think about Ursula Le Guin? And I assumed that this literary agent had an author, a new author, that wrote like Ursula Le Guin. And I said, well, who doesn't like Ursula Le Guin? Sure. But it turned out that it actually was Ursula Le Guin that he was representing, and I just was astounded. And that's how it happened. And it was very funny and strange, and it was wonderful. We did several books. Harcourt did several books by her. And that's the story. What it was like working with Ursula Le Guin as her editor at Harcourt. Editors do a range of things depending on the author, on the publisher. They can just proofread, basically just do mechanical small things. They can do suggest changes of sentences. They can suggest bigger changes in a story. Ursula Le Guin had a very strong sense of what she wanted to say and how to say it, and she really didn't want any editorial interference. So with her, I was mainly a proofreader. I'll give you an example. She spelled the word gray with the British spelling, which is G-R-E-Y, instead of the American gray, G-R-A-Y. And when I suggested that she use the American spelling, she said, no, I want it spelled G-R-E-Y. And I knew right away that this was an author that I would not be doing much. My main activity as her editor was to be an advocate for her, representing what she wanted to the publisher. Publishers have their own opinion about how things should be done, and sometimes it could be in conflict with what an author wants. So, for example, it was very important for Le Guin that the image of a character on the jacket be a person of color. That was important for her, and the publisher, the designer, the book designer, the person doing the jacket didn't follow that and didn't want to. And I had to advocate for her and actually get one of the executives to step in and decide an issue in the author's favor. So that was my main work, that was really it. It was kind of, it was not labor intensive. I basically smoothed out any kind of friction between her and various people that worked for the publisher, and that was basically my role. Sharing with you a couple of examples of how sometimes an author who is very wise and smart can be clueless. This is Ursula Le Guin. I was her editor for Harcourt. She told me that they were going to do a film based on her Earthsea stories, Miyazaki, but it wasn't the father, it was the son. And it turned out they came to her house in Oregon, and there was the movie, and she wasn't happy with it. I learned that the father, the great Miyazaki, Hayao, approached her much earlier and wanted to do an Earthsea animation. And of course, you know, she didn't know anything about Miyazaki, you know, the great author of Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle and so forth. And she said no. And what a shame, because that would have been amazing. The other example that I thought was kind of amusing of her being clueless, she puzzled about why J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter book, the first one, was such a tremendous success. You know, a book about a school for wizards. Because she had did a book on a school for wizards in the Earthsea books, and she said, you know, I don't understand why was that so successful? So just sharing that with you, I think. And ordinarily, she was extremely wise and very smart, and shows you that we're all human. So Tomek Kołodziejczak asked me which books I edited for Harcourt of Ursula Le Guin, and there were about 8 books from between the years 2000 and 2008. We did The Other Wind, Earthsea book, The Telling from the Hainish cycle, Lavinia, Tales from Earthsea, and then 3 books in the Annals of the Western Shore cycle, Gifts, Voices, Powers, and Changing Planes, which I believe Tomek is going to be talking about. I particularly liked Changing Planes. It was kind of light, not as heavy morally or philosophically, but it was very pleasant to have the sense that in an uncomfortable place, in a boring place like an airport, you could step out of it in your mind and go someplace else. So it's almost like a metaphor for writing. The thoughts are free, right? Die Gedanken sind frei.
Na nagraniu mogliście zobaczyć rysunek smoka. To ilustracja wykonana własnoręcznie przez Ursulę Le Guin i wysłana do Michaela jako komentarz do jej perypetii z rynkiem filmowym. Coś jej się chyba nie podobało. Michael przesłał to nam a my pokazujemy ją Wam, widzom kanału Fantastycznego. Przypominam i zapraszam na mój wykład, moją opowieść 5 światów Ursuli Le Guin, a z Michaelem na pewno jeszcze się spotkamy, bo on ma dużo ciekawych rzeczy o światowej i polskiej fantastyce do opowiedzenia. Trzymajcie się. Czołem.